Welcome to Blended Scotch Reviews, episode number 9. As today we have our second single malt match. Now this channel is all about reviewing blended scotches, but nonetheless, when we research the blended scotches, we find single malts. And so we want to study a little bit of the single malts that go into these blended scotches. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas, March 22nd, 2025. It is 81 degrees, and we're going to be looking at the Ardmore and Highland Park 12. I'm going to go ahead and pour these into my blacked out Glencairns because this is a competition. The Ardmore is going to go in glass number 1. Highland Park glass number 2, and that's so I don't evaluate a whiskey based on its color, and because part of the fun is trying to pick out which whiskey's which simply by tasting, and so sometimes color can give away the game, so to speak. Now I'm going to talk while I stir these glasses around, mix them up so I don't know which is which. Now it's been a few months since we last had an episode of Blended Scotch Reviews. I've been working on other projects. So the first pair of blended scotches that we looked at, the famous Grouse, this is the second pair. The famous Grouse is what we studied, and it had Highland Park in it. And so the last pair that we looked at, the famous Grouse, had Highland Park. And that surprised me some because I'd really tasted no peat in the Grouse. But then after trying Highland Park along with the Grouse, I could definitely find it there in that very sweet malty blend. Very surprising. We saw that Highland Park eventually purchased the famous Grouse brand in the 1970s. Then we looked at Teacher's Highland Cream, and we saw that the Teacher family had constructed the Ardmore distillery in 1898. So of course we wanted to taste that single malt along with the blend, and you could readily tell the relationship there. That was because Teacher's has a nice little peat smoke to it, and so does the Ardmore. So that made perfect sense. But of these two parent single malts, which of the two would we prefer? In the famous Grouse versus Teacher's Highland, I chose Teacher's Highland. And that continued the theme from the first pairing, where we did Isle of Skye 8 versus Dewar's White. And again, the peaty Isle of Skye won. So now, after looking at Isle of Skye 8 and Dewar's, we did Aberfeldy 12 and we did Talisker as parent single malts. So now we're going to compare these two, Highland Park and Ardmore, to see which one I prefer. The rules are simple. This will be a blind taste test examining the nose, palate, mouthfeel, burn, and finish to see simply which one would I prefer. If I was given both of these choices 5 nights in a row, which one would I prefer 3 nights out of the 5? Sometimes this is very close. It's a very tight race. The first time around, it was not easy. So if there is a tie, and that's possible, price and affordability will be the tiebreaker. Along the way, I'll try to identify which is which just for fun. So let's look at these competitors in a little bit more depth here. Coming in at 86 proof, Highland Park 12 or Viking Honor. This whiskey is a major contributor to the famous Grouse, coming to us from the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland. Highland Park Distillery was founded by Magnus Johansson, who was licensed to operate his previously illegal still in 1798. The distillery uses a local peat that is rich in heather. The box says it's very spicy and yet well-rounded. a wild harmony of honey drenched oranges, winter spiced fruitcake, and floral peat smoke. Well, I'm not sure about all that, but I do get the peat smoke. This bottle is available at Specs here in Fort Worth for $50.49. Goody goody, $49.99. Total Wine, $43.99. And this is my second bottle of HP 12, so you know I enjoy it for sure, and it's very affordably priced. Now let's look at the Ardmore. 80 proof. This is the major contributor to Teacher's Highland Cream, founded in 1898 by the Teacher family. It is now owned by Beam Suntory, or Suntory Global, whatever they are. They use Highland peat, nose heather honey, cinnamon, and toffee bonbon. Really? Toffee bonbon. Okay. Palate, creamy vanilla, smoky charcoal, yep, honey and spice. Specs had it for $37.88 when I bought it, but it is now no longer available in Fort Worth anywhere that I can find. Neither is Teacher's Highland Cream. I contacted Beam Suntory, and they said they're no longer importing this into America. So much sadness there. Teacher's is one of my absolute favorite blends, and my bottle's down below half. And the Ardmore I really enjoyed as well. So I think with the downturn in the Scotch whiskey business, it's simply gone away. Maybe never to return. I don't know. Well, let's get on with our contest. I start by nosing, and if there's a stronger nose on one than the other, then I'll start drinking from the weaker nose. Okay, this is the one on my left. Not a real strong nose. It's faintly sweet, a little bit of peat. Now it's for the one on the right. This is the weaker nose. Yeah, not getting much there. But that doesn't say much. My nose is deficient, shall we say. I have trouble smelling whiskeys, for sure. All right, so not much on the nose. The left one had the stronger nose, but not by much. So we will begin tasting here in just a bit. Let's look at these bottles, bottle label and marketing. You know, you got a fancy bottle for Highland Park and a nice classic bottle with the Ardmore. But you know, I think there's some kind of an eagle that lives at the distillery, so that's why the eagle's up there. You know, so these are two nice looking bottles, but I think the edge on the bottle and label is going to go with the Highland Park. And Highland Park is wildly famous and popular. You know, I never heard of Ardmore before until I started researching Teachers. So it's not wildly popular. So Highland Park wins the bottle label and marketing. Color and appearance. If you look at these side by side, I think clearly the Highland Park is darker, and it does have the proof on top of this. You know, it's got the higher proof, 86 proof versus 80. And the Ardmore says it's legacy, but there's no age statement there, whereas the Highland Park has 12. So by all the scientific data there, I think the Highland Park has the color and appearance advantage. So let's go now with the palette here. And again, the one on the right had the advantage or disadvantage of the weaker nose. So the one on the left won the nose. So let's start with this weak nose on the palate. Now I'm getting a little bit of peat. Actually, now this is coming in nice and clear. Sometimes you just gotta let it sit for a while. Yeah, this one now has a little bit more peat smoke. Wow, I'm gonna have to do this over. Yeah, let me sample the one on the left now, because now that the nose on the right one is really strong now. And that is really good. Wow. Definitely peaty, but sweet. You get the heather. Which is which. I don't know these whiskeys as well as I should. Second bottle of Highland Park, I don't know it by now, but I don't drink it that often. So this one was definitely a rich mouthful there. All right, let me cleanse my palate. Now for the one on the right. Not as spicy as the one on the left. Certainly peaty. A little bit different flavor of peat. Not as spicy. Not as rich. I'm going to say the one on my right is the 80 proof Ardmore. And the one on the left is the Highland Park. That's my initial guess. Let me, initially I think the one on the left has got spicier, richer taste. Let me see about mouthfeel. Yeah, I'm going to say that's the Highland Park. It's got a little bit richer mouthfeel, spicier, nice long finish. That is really quite good. And I'm thinking that that's the Highland Park. Back to the one on the right. That's the Ardmore. So this one should have a number 1 on the bottom, and it does. And over here, the number 2 for the Highland Park. So I successfully figured out which was which based upon the depth of the flavors, the mouthfeel, the spiciness. That 80 proof on the Ardmore really underperformed next to the 86 proof of the Highland Park. Highland Park, much older at 12 years. So which do I prefer? I think clearly we have a winner with the Highland Park. Highland Park for the win. And the Ardmore is good. It is definitely good. But when you drink a weaker whiskey next to a stronger whiskey, its limitations show. And so that was definitely the case with the Ardmore versus the Highland Park. So again, we're experiencing the same thing that we had with the first pairing, in that I preferred the teachers over the famous grouse, but when it came to the parent whiskeys, I favored the Highland Park to the Ardmore. And that's the same situation we had when we looked at Isle of Skye versus Dewar's. So that's amazing that worked out. But this time both parents were peated, whereas Aberfeldy really wasn't peated for the Dewar's. Dewar's gets their peat from somewhere else, I guess. But clearly HP is the winner for this matchup of the single malts here on Blended Scotch Reviews. So this is the single malt match number 2. Highland Park is the winner. All right, well, that's all for Blended Scotch Reviews this time. This is Stab the Dragon, out here.